Let's go.
Hello and welcome to the Record Players Podcast, objectively the best opinion in music. My name's Hattie, and as always, I'm joined by Jack and Dennis. So on today's episode, we're discussing the latest album by British singer Laura Mvula. Album's named Pink Noise. Let's do this.
Damn. I was like, he's brought the production value up here, but no.
What?
God damn.
What? How dare you? Okay. Australia's worse off on the world stage by the fact this guy is on the Spotify charts, I tell you. It was going so well. I had such high hopes for you.
I'm going to pass over to Dennis. You're an engineer.
I felt the spirit. I wouldn't be surprised if I got this off someone off the street selling this CD for like £5. How do I stop it?
This is crazy. Okay, so for everyone that watches, if you've got an opinion on this album, please make sure to leave a comment. We'll read and respond to every bit of feedback we get. Did you like the album? Did you hate it? Just let us know. And if you like our channel in general, please make sure to like and subscribe, as well as follow us on Twitter. That's at TRP_pod. That's the Record Players Podcast. Okay, so just give a little bit of background. Laura Mvula, sorry, I'm going to mess that up quite a few times. So this is her third album. She's a British singer from Birmingham, I believe, in her mid-30s. And if you have no clue about her, this record is rooted in an 80s sound. There's definitely elements of synth pop, funk, dance, disco, the like. I mean, I knew nothing about this lady prior to this. I know the album's got a lot of, pretty much universal critical acclaim, but she's not someone I was aware of prior. So I guess the question I'll throw to the floor is, does this album deserve it? It's kind of like a Blue Weekend kind of duality. Like, did it live up to the expectation for you guys?
Has it got that much hype behind it? I've not read anything from anyone about it. Gotta stay true to my own review, but yeah, what are they saying? Like, that it's
Well, I think
without flaw? Are they just generally think it's good? What are they saying?
I think Laura Mvula in general had quite a bit of potential behind her a few years back. So she did a song, I can't remember off the top of my head which one it was, but it was nominated for the Mercury Prize, I think back in 2015, 2016. And she got a record deal, released an album, her first album, Dreaming Room, and it didn't do so well financially, even though I think it did get critical acclaim. Didn't do so well financially. She ended up getting dropped by Sony, and since then she got blackballed a little bit by the record industry. And this is her second album. She's with Atlantic
it's
now.
The third.
I was like, yeah, she had an album before that called "Sing to the Moon," which I listened to.
Did she?
That was 2013. "Sing to the Moon" is the song that she did a version of with Snarky Puppy as well. Which I'll say, if you haven't listened to it, absolutely go and listen to that right now. If you've clicked on this video and you're checking out Laura Mvula, go and check out the Snarky Puppy cover. It's like a reimagining kind of "Sing to the Moon" because it's fucking sick.
Thought it was great.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and we're all Snarky Puppy fans, so yeah, great band in general. Okay, so Jack, then you had a bit of background. I mean, did you generally like the album? Do you remember that her second release?
I thought it was it was enjoyable as an album. I don't think it reaches her full potential, which I got something I'll come back to with a few things. There are some really, really good parts of this album that I absolutely love. I think she's got an amazing voice. There's a couple
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that I'd like to add to this album, a couple of extra layers that I'd put in to kind of take it to the next level for me. But I'm not the biggest fan of the 80s sound anyway, so that could be a bit of me, like my preconceived notions of her not gelling with what I heard.
Non-80s bias.
I thought you would be the one to like it the most, but that's just because I heard, some elements of artists like Prince.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's the MJ homage as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the track? Got Me.
Got Me, I think. Yeah.
That shit's like, what's the song? Is it like The Way You Make Me Feel?
I think so.
The instrumental sounds straight like a Michael
Way
Jackson
you
song.
make me feel.
It's the yeah.
Yeah, it's like a,
and it
I don't want
bangs.
to say carbon copy, but
Yeah, it's a good beat. If
Very-
you're gonna steal a beat, why not steal that one?
Yeah.
okay. Well, Dennis, what about you? How are your feelings?
I didn't know anything about Laura Mvula going into it, but I've done a bit of looking into her now, and I listened a little bit to her previous album, Dreaming Room, and I think in this album she's moved away a bit from that sound. This album is a bit more poppy. Obviously, it sounds like that 80s pop sound, synth pop, new wave sound, but except for, I would say, like the title track Pink Noise, that to me sounds more like a dance new disco type beat. I can imagine hearing that on like a house mix, for instance. It's got that 4 to the floor beat.
Dude, I was thinking the same thing. Like, that track was one of the ones I liked the most, and the immediate thing was like, I need a house remix of it. It's so weird, because I like the song, but I thought the next level would be if that song was remixed, just because the core foundation was so like heavy and in your face. I was like, just speed up that tempo a little bit. And it'll be...
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I think and that is quite common. I've heard tracks like Signs by Snoop Dogg sped up just a little bit just to fit that house BPM, and it just sounds, like you said, just amazing.
That sounds horrible. That is absolute sacrilege to put a house remix of Signs.
I'll send you the link.
Wait, Signs. How does that go again?
The like collaboration with everybody.
I'm not sure of what you do.
That's one.
JT
With
yeah.
That song's huge.
Yeah, that on a 4 to the floor beat.
That would work. That would work as a house remix. I haven't heard it, but come on, dude.
It starts with remixing Signs. You wait till they come for the whole of like his OG album.
A whole crossover album. Yeah.
And he's the guy that will do it as well. When he's done with reggae,
Right.
you know he's going to like some cheesy club remixes.
Yeah.
What Snoop's debut?
He'll become
Like
Snoop
MDMA
Brick,
and
who's
Juice.
house DJ name.
Don't give him too many ideas, Hattie.
Yeah.
Back to Laura.
Yeah,
Okay.
no. So I'd say this album is a bit more poppy, whereas her last album, I would say, sounds like even orchestral almost, which makes sense because I think she's got a degree in composition.
She's definitely got a lot more. I know she's come up so much. This is almost like a crutch at this point, but she's got a lot of like similar potential with Janelle Monáe. And I really hope that she gets picked up by someone like Big Boy's gonna push her down that road and give her the time of day to like explore that sort of area more. Because she also she plays a ton of instruments as well as like her composition stuff. Because there's loads of pictures I was looking for when I was making the thumbnail for this, where she's playing like guitar live.
Wow. Oh yeah. I saw a thumbnail on YouTube with that.
Yeah.
I think
Who the fuck plays a guitar now?
I know, right? She's really, she's going down that 80s route.
Her and Jordan Rudess from Dream Theater. That's it.
Keeping the whole industry afloat.
Yeah, exactly.
Dragon Force.
Okay. Well, let me offer a few alternative opinions to this discussion. So, start off with the good stuff. For me, that like production, the mixing, immaculate. For this style of music is exactly where you want it to be. I thought every instrument, every layer popped. There was great use of panning, layers, compression, everything from an audio. I don't even think of the phrase. From an audio production aspect, I thought it was really good. The weak point I had with this album was her voice and the way she used it. I would say technically, I think she's a competent singer, but she has this style of just belting so many parts with to the point where her voice sounds strained, not in terms of like she's falling out of pitch, but just, I don't know, just the timbre of her voice. I can tell it's a deliberate thing, but for me it just felt like it lacked emotion and expression that I would favor in another singer. I mean, you made the reference to Janelle Monáe. That's a great example where the sound is so emotional and it works well contrasting against the often the like synthetic musical elements. But on this, I found it was like often synthetic production and instrumentation, but that worked well. But coupled with her voice, there wasn't necessarily a lot of passion that got to me. So that kind of impacted my listening experience quite a lot. But I mean, is that something you guys would disagree with me on, or did you think she was,
I think I would,
a passionate singer?
Yeah, I would disagree as well, just because I thought her voice had quite wide dynamics to it. But I'll let Jack.
I guess she had that other thing where it felt like her voice was just being used as another instrument, almost like a lead instrument. But I don't know. I wanted a bit of, rawness that I didn't get. I
think because if you going back to Sing to the Moon, because it's a fantastic song. She has the range for that softness. That's where you can see really, really good examples of it there.
Right.
I think this album is just a bit of a it's a bit of a party, so she's getting the volume for pushing her voice, but you could also tell she's got a bit of angst going, which is when that power behind her voice I think really serves it well. I think if the people we've looked at in the couple of weeks before this that have been R&B singers, what I've been calling out for, what I've been clamoring to hear more of, is those belters, is someone to really get a track underneath them and just push out, just go as hard as they can, all that sort of range. And I think I think she does it really well in here. I would have also liked a bit more stark contrast. There's variety, but I'd like sharper distinctions. But I think part of that is kind of with the 80s vibe, like you're saying, she's in this synthetic world of digital sounds, and I think that she didn't want to stray too far from that. But I would have personally gone with super acoustic stuff for a couple of tracks, and then back at the 80s stuff, maybe a modern with a bit more of a driven 808 underneath some bass stuff going as well. But yeah,
I agree. It's playing to a genre formula, and I think it's going to work for a lot of people. But for me, I mean, like I said, there's definitely elements of hearing, like we've already mentioned, Prince and MJ, as an influence in some of the tracks, and I just feel like those are examples of singers that are super emotional. So you can have those synthetic points that I think they both had in a lot of their music, but also give more of themselves. But it's genre confines more than anything. For me, I'm not that big into the 80s. And I mean, this just adds to. I think we had the conversation before. There's so much in mainstream popular music that's on an 80s wave right now.
It is the flavour.
What do you guys think of that? Do you think it's a good thing to be in that cycle?
It's cheap.
Why? Just because it's not doing anything new.
The people. I mean, there's that as well, because it was the 90s 5 years ago, wasn't it? We just had all the 90s stuff coming back again. But I think the people that made the best music in the 80s were people who had elements of that formula and didn't use it. So MJ would have digital sounds in it, but he also worked with Quincy Jones and had real live instruments, and he's also a fucking genius that could come in and sing 16 different tracks to Quincy, who would then get musicians to record it, and he'd layer on top of it. And then people like Stevie Wonder as well, would work in digital sounds, but also has fucking piccolos and stuff doing his counter melody in tracks. So I think when it's good elements, but I think that the modern revisiting of it relies too much on the kind of it's like rose-tinted memories. You're they had really funky bass sounds, didn't they? And then all we get now is the bass sounds instead of
it's focusing on a few. Yeah, it's focusing on a few distinct elements that have 80s. You know, it makes you think of the 80s straight away, but it doesn't encompass everything that was good about that decade.
Square bass, like
It's a parody, basically. It's parodying that time, whereas it's not of that time.
Yes, yeah, I can definitely agree with that. And in some ways, I could even make the same comparison to I don't know. I felt like she did enough to incorporate different styles, but even with like the Saint Vincent album. But I think, say for me, I'm more of a 70s fan, so that's why I'd look at something like that with a more positive attitude. But I think that album, for example, was a particularly good way of having, being reminiscent of a certain decade, but also having enough to also give it a modern edge.
Well, for me, I've never been much of an appreciator of the voice in general. It's always sort of faded into the background, and I focus more on the instrumentation rather than the voice. But in this case, I did quite like how she used her voice. And in particular, like if you look at a song like Before the Dawn, there is a little bit towards the end where she like layered her voice over and over again into this sort of chorus. And so I did quite like that. Her voice was just enough. I wasn't looking for, say, emotion to come through in her voice, and I don't mind that that synthetic sound that I guess she was going for with this genre that she's playing in. One thing I would say is she didn't take it too far. Like if you look at modern day pop music as we have with doing our Spotify top 10 reviews, you do notice just auto-tune artifacts all over the shop. Sometimes deliberately, sometimes on the Justin Bieber track, probably to correct something that didn't get right in the studio. I didn't hear as much of that in this, and I think it's because she's a gospel singer. I think she's grown up singing in the gospel from a young age. So,
I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, right. Shock.
Just because, again, I agree with what you're saying, but it's just like the I don't want to necessarily say it as derogatory, but the emotionless manner in which she delivers vocals is so contrary to something like gospel, which is like the most extreme, like emotional, like a voice being a voice,
right,
in its purest form. But sorry, God, it's just not something I would have predicted.
So you are surprised that she comes from a gospel background, because you're saying you don't really hear that as much on this. Well,
no, that's what the inflections and the what makes a human voice unique and not replicable by any other instrument. That's something that's on full display in gospel, where often it's like an a cappella, but this she is another instrument to me,
right?
And it's even like it's things like she delivers a lot of lines without any vibrato, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the few things that like distinguishes the human voice to a lot of other things. And here it's very straight, really punchy, very straight. So
I think it's interesting Dennis has come with the composition stuff, because I think one of the better elements of the music is the way that because you said it earlier as well, how she's using the voice as a kind of instrument rather than using it specifically as the voice, the instrument.
Yeah.
Because she's playing with ideas of dissonance all over the album. It's giving it that kind of like a bit of an edge more than most like kind of stuff in the pop or R&B even spheres that we're used to listening to recently. And I think that she's kind of not made sacrifices to make that happen, but in order to facilitate her compositional choices, especially like the era stuff that she's working with, she's had to make it so that making sure that the voice is limited in what it can do in the range that it's given, because like a super sentimental, vibrato heavy, soft, delicate vocal wouldn't work over most of these tracks.
Agreed.
And then like the super gospel, like high range, loads of layered voices also would kind of be in stark contrast to those kind of multiple layers of thinner digital sounds. So I
guess.
Sorry, I think she'd have to go back to the drawing board in order to incorporate some of those things. I wouldn't say it would be better or worse as an album, but it's like once you've got to the point of recording voice, you're kind of in that box that it excludes some of those choices.
I guess what I was going to say is it would lead back to a point you made earlier for me, where I think she probably would have done better to pick a handful of tracks with this sound and keep them on the album and spend the rest of the album incorporating different styles she should have done before. You know, like you said, different genres or sounds, because then it would allow her to be more expressive and maybe call back to kind of some of the sounds she did on previous albums. Again, I have no knowledge of what she sounded, but based on what you were saying, it seemed like there was a slightly different approach. But for me, that's what I thought might have improved it.
What
was just a bit much of one thing.
Is in a similar area, but stepping away from the voice for a second. Once I'd listened to it one time, my Spotify kept playing, and Hiatus Coyote came on, and it reminded me of the Snarky Puppy track because they're obviously jazzier and there's more like contrapuntal stuff going on, whereas the Pink Noise is kind of through and through backing and melody, and it just made me think that I wish for the extra layer of this there was something in the music that was giving that counterpoint for her voice, that was something. She's got melodic dissonance and like tension all over the place. I wish there was some production tension as well, some other instrument to challenge her voice for control of the tracks, something to make it like little fills here and there, like I mentioned Stevie Wonder earlier, little like flute stuff, or some brass maybe if you want to like stick to the 80s, get some synth brass, but something that's giving jazzy little licks and fills at the end of 4 bars or 8 bars or the end of a verse would have taken this up a whole 2 or 3 levels for me as an album.
Yeah, I agree.
Instrumentally, it was very clean. There was nothing, even though there were little excerpts, like there were bits of like trumpet melodies here and there, right? But everything was like diatonic, right? So it stayed within key. It didn't give any tension like you're describing. It's definitely something I heard, and for better or worse.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Toto, and I've been listening to some Toto albums, and this is very similar to Toto. You know, they kind of made sort of high-end pop. Well, in my opinion, they made like high-end pop in the 80s.
Right.
But the thing is, they also had session musicians, so world-class musicians that were playing and composing the actual music itself. And so they're all trying to like find some kind of spotlight. So that's when you do get these competing melodies and these competing ideas coming in to so that it doesn't get imbalanced. But I think in this case, there were only 3 producers: Laura herself, who probably composed most of the songs, another guy called Dan Hume, and then another guy called Troy Miller, who really are the only credits on the album. I couldn't find like as much information about some of the instruments that were played. I heard some funk guitar in some songs, which I quite liked sometimes. So, for instance, I think it's on Magical. There's a funk guitar. No, Before the Dawn Again, and you could probably guess this is probably going to be one of my top 3 tracks. Before the Dawn Again, there's a funky guitar that runs all the way underneath it, but it never changes. It's literally the same thing over and over again. It sort of comes in and out, but if you listen out for it, it sounds like it's the same sort of strumming line just in the background all the way through the track. And yeah, like you said, Jack, that could have been another opportunity that you could have done just a little fill here and there, just add a little bit of flavor.
There was another, like, I can't remember which track off the top of my head, but there was another one that had, because we were talking about earlier how the similar is to a lot of Prince and Michael Jackson stuff. There's like Prince's exact Telecaster single coil tinny tone, and it's like the boom chak chak chak, that sort of like almost funk stuff that he would do, and it's sick. Yep. But it goes from the beginning to the chorus without ever changing, and you know if that was a Prince track, he wouldn't stand for that. He'd have like 4 bars of that, he'd have a fill, he'd do 2 bars, the bass would come in with something different, like he'd be doing that taking a whole song of the blocks of like verse and chorus and just cutting them up where he can, putting in that new material. I think that was what was missing from this.
I think it should be said. I watched one brief video where Laura Mvula talked about how this album was a bit more stripped down. She started with simple ideas, and that's how the approach that she took, simplify as much as possible. And I think pop kind of lends itself to that kind of writing style. So I think it should be said that perhaps she got a little bit burnt from being dropped after her last album. That in that case she went, because that sounds almost orchestral to me. So in that case she had some complicated compositions, and it wasn't received so well financially.
Dumbed it down.
I think she dumbed it down.
I'd love to hear the original ideas that he had. Like if she's got those as demos, I'd love to hear that. That'd be sick.
You know what? I think she might have put them on Instagram or something, because I know, she is probably active on social media.
Okay. Before, I think we should get into some of our favourite tracks. Anything else of note before we move on?
I wish, speaking of another new age 80s vibe, in a complete 180 flip from The Weeknd, where I wish he would slow down again, I wish most of these tracks were 10 to 20 BPM faster.
Yeah, like we were saying, the house remix on Pink Noise. Boom.
But I think that's just because it's in an awkward space. Like I don't think the song itself needs to change. I think just for like the kind of celebratory 80s vibe, it one way or the other it could go. You either like abandon that and go for the darker side, or you stick with it, but it needs to like be sped up a little bit. And I think this becomes a very different album.
Yeah, I'm not mad at that. That would be interesting to hear. At least between the tracks, some could stay in this tempo range, and some would go a little faster. Anything to give it a little more diversity. I would probably agree with that. Okay, let's talk about some of the tracks that we liked the most. So I'll chuck at you, Dennis. You got top three?
Yeah. At number 3 was Before the Dawn. I thought the bass line was great. The funky guitar does run all the way through it. I didn't think it was too bad. What do you guys think? Does this sound like a ballad? I got kind of 80s ballad vibes from this track. Wouldn't know how to sort of classify it.
It's one of the slower kind of tracks that's built on harmony and like it's one of the more emotional tracks as well. Like saying with the ballad, it's one of the ones that stands out for that.
I wasn't too fussed with it as a song. It wasn't my favourites, but that like airy harmony bit at the beginning was a nice change. I was absorbed, at least in that intro. Yeah, it was one of the more memorable sections, at least.
The next one is Got Me, the Michael Jackson-esque one, which another great bass line. And number 1 has to be Pink Noise. It's asking to be remixed. So.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I love this song because of how it would sound if somebody else did it, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's like almost there. It's almost there.
It doesn't need a remix. It just needs 10 BPM.
To be fair, I don't think it even needs a remix. Yeah, like you said, all it needs is 10 BPM. I reckon this could very well fit into a mix. Like if you were a DJ, you could just increase it by 10 BPM and it could fit in with your house mix, your other house tracks.
Yeah.
Well, what you got, Jack?
So I agree. Pink Noise was of the kind of 80s derivative tracks. This one's got the best combination of stuff. Like it's the bass is great on it. There's sounds chosen for the synths sit nicely in the mix. All of the elements that are around the whole album, this is the best like culmination of them working together. I think it was great. Great title track. Golden Ashes is my second one. It's one of the more like personal sounding tracks again. It's got like some of that range you were saying you wanted more of from her voice. And this is one where like it's really obvious how she's playing with the the harmony elements and like working with that kind of tension at the end of lines, and how she's pairing with the, I think it's a type of string quartet sound. I'm not entirely sure. Going off what you were saying earlier, Dennis, probably originally started with some orchestral stuff on that track, but has became synths. But yeah, really nice, like more personal approach. And then the last one, I've gone with What Matters featuring Simon Neil. We've not spoken about it.
No.
But I think it shows the potential for other tracks on this album, because it's super fucking relaxed. It's not too heavily stuck in, it's an 80s album, we need to like have an 80s revival party sound. And because she's giving a more relaxed performance and Simon Neil's giving a more relaxed performance, there's so much cohesion between them as an ensemble working with the backing track, and you get like it builds and builds, so you get like towards the end more of that kind of powerful voice coming out from both of them, some nice like trading vocal fills towards the end and stuff. But yeah, just generally that more relaxed step back from the driven sound worked for me. It was really good.
I think on that track, I mean, the reason why I didn't bring it up at all, I wasn't so much a fan of that track, and it was for a key element. I think she did it a few times. It had like one of those like sudden key changes, right, where it just goes up like a semitone or a tone without any like compositional wizardry to get it there. I think there was probably about 3 or so tracks that did that, and that's just like a songwriting cliche that I really don't like. Again, is very stereotypical of 80s music, but it rubbed me the wrong way on that and a few others.
I also don't hate that. There's especially on with a singer like her, and like that's a more ballady type track. Like that's where you expect to hear it, isn't it? Where you like you've gotten to the third chorus or something maybe, and then you're like, instead of repeating, you take it up a step. I agree, it's a bit of a cliche. It's just
so cliche, man.
Yeah, but it's cliches are cliches for a reason.
Yeah. It's just not for me. But yeah, I noted that as like one of my biggest like annoyances, because it was like a repeated trend on the album. But yeah, I mean, overall, my picks would be quite similar. I share a couple with you. So Pink Noise, definitely a standout of like song that kind of plays to the strengths of what the album commonly is displaying musically wise. Completely agree. Probably just speed it up a little bit and it would be like really, really good. Second, I've got Golden Ashes, same as you, Jack, right? And for the same reasons as well. It was just a little different. It was a darker feel. There was more tension, like you said, and I particularly enjoyed the pulsing string / synths at the end. So I agreed with what you said. It would be interesting hearing it in different contexts, but it did work well on this track. And then got me as well. Like you, Dennis, for the MJ vibes. Pretty similar between us all, I think. Shall we do our rating?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Oh no. Carry on.
Yeah. Right. So I will see what you guys say, because my rating, I think, is in flux. So I will let you guys pick, and I will do my best Jack impression and go from what you guys choose.
Go to Dennis first.
Yeah, Dennis, where are you placing this?
I'm thinking twice now. Coming in, I was going to put this as a straight up fire, and now I literally just thought, could I put this in Mind Blown? And I don't think I could, just because...
What's wrong with you, dude?
You would give this Mind Blown, but not Tyler.
No, I don't think I could, because it's so genre specific.
Jack, how do you get someone sectioned?
If she... I think there's so much potential with Laura Mvula. I think, she has so much scope. If you look at her last album, like I said, it was almost compositional. I think she can do jazz. I reckon, she could get she could have done an album not just so focused on that 80s sound. I guess she was inspired by that 80s sound.
You've made Hattie do a Simon Cowell impression, is what you've done.
I'm not mad at this album because it's only 37 minutes long. It doesn't overstay its welcome.
You're saying she could do this, she could do that, but she didn't.
Yeah. What she did do was an 80s pop album. There's synth pop, there's In Pink Noise, that to me, I would call that a new disco song. I like all this type of music. So, I think that's a solid fire. I enjoy this album back to front, and I'm going to keep coming back to it. So I think it's a solid fire. I was just debating live with you whether to put it in Mind Blown.
So it's a high conflict. It's a high fire.
It's a high fire.
You're giving it a high fire essentially, because it could have straddled that line.
Yeah.
God damn.
Took you on a journey there.
Every week it's a new twist. Shit. All right, Jack. Let's bring some common sense back to this channel.
I can't believe I had to fight you about Tyler's album, and then you're trying to put. Oh my god!
We had 2 days with Tyler's album. I think that was a fair judgment.
If I had one listen to each of these albums, I could tell you which is the better album.
Probably, yeah.
This is a back pat. It's a high back pat. At best, it's a very low fire because there's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of of skill on show. There's some nice compositional stuff. I think it's probably the best back pat, bar maybe Gojira. And it's maybe like nipping at the heels. But I don't think, like, if I say, for me, probably Song Machine, the normal track list is probably one of the weaker fire tracks, but it's the extra tracks on that album absolutely saved it. I didn't get the same feeling from this album that I got from the extra tracks of Song Machine. To justify my placement, I always thought this was going to be back pat because there are good tracks here. There are a couple of tracks that could be great tracks, but it's not an album of great tracks.
Yeah. For me, like, my personal enjoyment in like the most subjective way would even be in the low backpack to high ribbon area. But I would say, like, if I'm trying to be objective and trying to like imagine myself who was like really keen on this sound, which I'm not really, then it is quite well made in a lot of aspects. So probably the fairest thing for me to do is to give it a back pat. Even if I went ribbon, it would end up in back pat as a consensus. But yeah, it's a back pat. It's an objective back pat.
You would potentially give it ribbon otherwise. Sorry. Yeah.
It's just not for me. Like it does what it does quite well. Like it's the argument between like you'd say like, oh, this is the best and this is my favorite, that kind of thing. And it's
that's
like,
what I think, because I'm not a massive fan of the 80s stuff, but I like this album more than I like 80s stuff. So that's why I think it deserves the back pat.
Yeah, it's a back pat. It's a back pat. That's I'm fine with that.
See, I like the 80s stuff, and I also like the derivative stuff from the 80s stuff, like new disco, like house remixes, or even early 90s techno songs like Good Life, Inner City, things like that. And this has that sort of sound.
Yeah.
So that's why, to me, this is great. Something I'm going to come back to. Hence the high praise.
That's fair enough. I mean, what's not fair is considered mind blown, but
this conversation is going to carry on post stream.
I should say I didn't even consider it until I was right here. I was just like, oh, this is a fire album. This is a solid fire. And then I just doubted myself briefly. Could it go in? I wasn't even before the stream. I wasn't even considering a mind blow.
Had you come with fire, I might have backed you. But
because I led.
Because you went to Mind Blown, you just it just went out straight out the window.
I need to rethink that delivery.
That's a strategic meta layer to getting your rating where you want it.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the game theory behind us doing a consensus ranking, right? So many thoughts. Okay, all right. Well, let's wrap it up because we've been here for a minute. So yeah, I think it's a consensus backpat between us. Do we have any final thoughts? Anything we'd like to?
I think it's
share?
pretty good. If you haven't, go and listen to the "Sing to the Moon" Snarky Puppy. Listen to the whole Snarky Puppy album because they've got sick shit. They do it with Jacob Collier and other artists that I love listening to as well. But "Sing to the Moon," Snarky Puppy, Laura Mvula, banging.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out because I haven't seen it. Cool. All right. I think that's it. We'll see you guys next week. Remember, like and subscribe. All right.